Bruno Luce here with GLB Productions. Thanks for joining us for this video. Today I'd like to show you the BSS AR-133 active DI box. This is one of my personal favorites when it comes to active DI boxes, and as I'll explain, it has some unique features that set it apart from many of the DI boxes on the market. So let's get started. So here's a close-up of the DI box. Now, one of the first things that you'll notice about this, and one of the things that makes it extremely unique in the market, is its shape. Not only does it have these side bumpers which protect the DI from falls and scrapes and so on, they give it a very interesting appearance. It almost looks like a little tank, and a number of people have commented that my DI boxes look like they're ready to go to war, which I think is not far from what many of us sound engineers experience when we're doing live shows, is it? The other thing about the DI box is this curved shape. Now, this shape has been copied by quite a number of manufacturers, and as I'll explain later, it allows you to run cables under the DI box, which is extremely useful when you want to keep things neat on stage. You'll also notice that the rubber bumpers actually extend out beyond the end of the DI in order to give protection to the switches and connectors on that side. The DI box is quite large. Dimensions are 5.7 inches by 4.9 by 2.3 inches tall, and the box itself weighs 650 grams without the battery. But in the case of DI boxes, having some weight is often very useful because it stops them from being kicked around on stage. So now let's look at some of the connectors on the end of the DI box. Moving on, we have the input side of the DI. Like many good designs, the DI has the inputs on one end and the outputs on the other end. The good point about this is that it prevents you from confusing the two. As you can see, it has the standard input and link connectors that are common to all DIs. The idea being that you connect your source here, whether it be a guitar or a keyboard or some kind of AV device, and you use the link connector to then take the signal onto your on-stage amplifier or other personal monitoring system, as the case may be. The unusual thing that you will immediately notice on this DI box is that it has an XLR input connector. And as you can see from the labeling, this is in fact an unbalanced XLR. Now, the advertising for the box states that this is an active DI box or line balancer. You can imagine that this DI box would come in useful anytime you need to transformer isolate or ground lift something which has only an XLR output. A good example that I can think of from recent experience is you're beginning to see acoustic guitars which have XLR and quarter-inch outputs. The reason for this being that the preamp on the guitar has a balanced output, so they provide you with a quarter-inch output to connect to an amplifier, as well as an XLR output to connect to the PA system. I can think of a number of B-band systems that have this. The issue with those XLR outputs is that there is often no ground lift switch on them, and as a result you'll get a ground loop because the guitar is connected both to an on-stage amplifier which has one ground reference and the PA system which has a different ground reference. Hence you have buzz due to a ground loop being formed. You could connect that XLR output from the guitar to this and then be able to both ground lift and transformer isolate the guitar from the PA system, thus solving the problem. It means that the DI can also be used as a line balancer and isolator, so you could plug the output of your mixer in here and then use the output to connect to the amplifiers and loudspeakers if, for example, your speakers and amps were on a different circuit to your mixer and other effects. It just adds to the versatility of the box, and it's a really nice feature to have. You'll see here that there is a pad switch. Now this switch controls is not only an input pad, it is also a control for the input impedance of the box. With it set to 0, as you can see here, the DI box has an input impedance of 1 mega ohm and a maximum input before clip of +9 dBu. So this is intended for passive instruments, for example a Fender Jazz bass with no onboard preamp, or an acoustic guitar that is equipped with only a sound hole pickup with no onboard electronics. So passive instruments, typically you would use the 0 dB setting. With it set to the 20 dB setting, this is 20 dB pad, yeah, not boost, the box has an input impedance of 47 kilo ohms and a max input level before clip of +29 dBu. This is suitable for line level applications as well as dealing with instruments that have an active preamp. So a lot of acoustic guitars nowadays have a very hot output signal. In fact, some of my Takamine guitars, they actually output as high as +7 volts, which will typically overdrive the input of an active DI box. So with this setting, it allows you to deal with both passive instruments as well as high output active instruments such as keyboards and active acoustic guitars as well as active basses. You know the old sound engineers rule that if the source is passive, you use an active DI box, and if the source is active, you use a passive DI box. This pad switch means that this box is a real jack-of-all-trades Swiss Army knife. You can use this for just about anything, active, passive, or as we'll see, loudspeaker level. At the 40 dB setting, the input impedance is 47 kilo ohms and max input level before clip is a whopping +49 dBu. And what that means is that you can take the output, say, of a solid state guitar amplifier or a valve amplifier in conjunction with a loudspeaker. Remember, valve amps need to be always connected to a loudspeaker. This is not a load box. And you can run it into this DI box and take the electric guitar signal that way, which makes this a very versatile piece of kit. And having all three of these settings available in a single box is really wonderful, and that's why this box is not the cheapest DI, but it is extremely good value for money because it really can handle just about anything that you throw at it, whether it be... So this is the output section of the BSS AR-133, and as you can see, once again it's helpfully labeled output, and they've put the output connector by itself on one end of the DI box. This allows a straight through signal flow and reduces the possibility of confusing the connectors. You'll also see the little door for the 9-volt battery. The box runs off either phantom power, or if there's no phantom available, it will default to battery, or if for some reason phantom power fails during the show, which is nice to have. You'll also notice that it uses very high quality connectors. It uses Nutric XLRs with gold plated pins. Nice to see. And the other thing which you'll see on the end of the box is the power switch and the ground lift. Now a lot of DI boxes, they use the input jack as the on-off switch. The BSS box has a power on switch, which I think is quite a nice feature because it sort of reminds you to switch the box on and off. It also means that if you're in a situation where the box is always plugged in, you can switch the box off and save the batteries without having to unplug the DI and then forget which lead was plugged into it in the first place. So, you know, good British thinking there, I think. Now, when I switch the switch on, you'll notice that the LED turns on and then starts blinking. There you go. The LED blinking is an indication that the box is running off battery power. If the box is powered off phantom, the LED will illuminate steadily. And of course, when the switch is off, the LED stays off. The ground lift switch, or in this case earth or lift, is used to break the pin 1 connection so that there is no ground connection through the DI box. You would use this in cases where you had a ground loop. Lift the ground and very often the buzz will go away. While we're here, I'd like to say one thing about the output of this DI box. Most active DI boxes, at least the cheaper ones, feature what is called an electronically balanced output, meaning that electronics are used to balance the circuit and then send it off to the PA. Passive DI boxes, as you know, use a transformer to do the balancing. The BSS AR-133 is a hybrid design in that it uses an active front end which allows you to have high input impedance of 1 mega ohm, but it also uses a transformer balanced output. This is an absolutely wonderful thing because it means that you have the best of both worlds. You have an active front end and you have the isolation and the DC blocking capabilities that are offered by a transformer balanced output. And now I'd just like to demonstrate how the box is connected to a sound reinforcement system. As always, you take your 1/4 inch cabling and connect to the input of the DI. The two connectors here are in parallel, so you can use either one. For simplicity, you just use the input connector. And then on the other side, you would take a standard microphone cable and connect the female to the output of the DI box. The curved shape of the box means that you can actually run cables underneath the DI. Can you see that? So you can have both cables coming out one side. You can do it the other way as well, so like so. And this gives a very neat appearance, and it's especially useful if the DI is in a position where there's not much space on one side, so you can have both cables running out of one side of the DI. You would take the male end and connect it to the microphone input on your sound reinforcement console. You would then switch the box on. Light begins to blink. If I switch on the phantom power here, you'll notice that the light glows steadily to show that you are on phantom power. So to complete this demonstration, I'll just give you an idea of how the box actually sounds with a real instrument. I have here a passive Squier jazz bass. This is one of their vintage modified series. It is fretless, it just happens to be the one that's out at the moment. And I'm going to do two things. The first thing I'll do is I'll connect the bass directly to the mixing console. Now, this is not recommended with a passive instrument because you will hear that it sounds quite muddy. And a lot of people do this and they wonder why it sounds so bad. The reason is the input impedance. For a passive instrument like this, it's recommended that you have at least 1 mega ohm input impedance, otherwise you will lose top end because of the loading of the pickups. I'll then connect it to the DI box in the normal way and you'll see the difference. As I move between the two, I'll adjust the gain to keep the overall level the same. And the sound that you'll be hearing will be taken directly from the output of the mixing console. So that's the demonstration of the BSS AR-133 active DI box. As you can hear, without the DI box, the bass sounded quite muddy, with very little in the way of high frequencies. With the DI box, the bass sounded much more full range, and there was also increased high frequencies, as you could hear from the string noise when I made mistakes. I hope this video is useful to you. The AR-133 is an excellent DI box. It's very rugged, it's very dependable, and it's useful for all types of instruments, from passive instruments right up to high output keyboards, as well as the outputs from amplifiers and like. Thanks for watching. If you've got any questions or comments, please leave them below and I'll do my best to respond to them. I'll see you next time. This is Bruno Luce for GLB Productions. Take care.